Welcome to Straight Talk Soundboard, which is a sounding board where senior technology leaders can try out ideas, exchange professional insights with industry peers, but also a soundboard to amplify those insights and ideas to a broader audience. I'm Paul Hemp, the editor-in-chief of Straight Talk Publications and Events at HCL Technologies. And we're fortunate to have with us here today four distinguished technology executives. We're going to talk a bit about how their priorities have changed during the turbulence of the past 12 to 18 months, and how those priorities may be shuffled again or reshuffled a bit as we begin to emerge from the pandemic. And also, I'm going to ask them to go out on a limb a bit and to make a prediction of what their professional situation will be a year from today. Before we jump into the conversation, let me take just a minute to introduce our panelists. First, we have Connie Flynn, who is the CIO of MKS Systems, which is a maker of advanced measurement systems and semiconductors. And Connie joins us from the Boston area today. Fausto Sosa is the CIO of CEMEX, the global building materials company, and he joins us today from Monterrey, Mexico. Saugaat Narula is a vice president and program management officer at the Heico companies, which is a specialty manufacturing company that focuses in construction and industrial services and other areas. And he's based in Chicago and joins us from the Midwest. And finally, Ajay Bahl, who is an executive vice president at HCL Technologies, who is oversees a variety of offerings in a variety of industries for HCL, a group called that we call the mega industries, and are primarily asset-heavy industries such as manufacturing, but offer a wide array of challenges. And his perspective from the point of view of clients that he knows, I think, provides an interesting accent to the conversations we have here. Welcome to all of you, Ajay and everyone. And Ajay joins us from Dallas today. So let's jump right in and talk a little bit about both what you've learned from the past year or so, and how that's affected what your priorities are, how it may have reshuffled what you're trying to do, but also some of that we hope is going to be temporary, but how this may have, how those priorities look as we hopefully emerge from the pandemic this year. Saugaat, why don't you start off here? Talk a little bit about what your past year has been like, how it's affected what you're trying to do, maybe any lessons you've learned that could be applied going forward.
Sure. So our focus for the last 18 months or so, and continues to be, is globally rolling out our ERPs on Microsoft Dynamics. So everything moving to the cloud. We are a holding company with 70 plus legal entities, operating companies. So it's a lot of implementations in parallel that are happening. And in addition to the ERP rollout, we're focusing a lot on data analytics, so data warehouse reporting, and the COVID impact primarily has made it a shift from ERP implementations, which is consultant heavy, on-site, where there's a lot of discussion and requirement gathering, a lot of analysis that traditionally was being done in person, and had to shift to 100% remote ERP implementation, which was a learning curve initially, and
to say the least, huh?
To say the least, right? And not just on our side, not just our operating companies, the manufacturing folks, but even on the consulting side, because you still have the time constraints, the cost constraints, and quality constraints, but now you're doing things completely different, which partially was explored, right? You would do pockets of the implementation remotely, even pre-COVID, but moving every single thing, kickoff, requirements gathering, validation, conference room pilots, which is traditionally everyone in a war room, and you got to talk to each other. That was all shifted from in person to using Microsoft Teams. So that was the biggest change, I would say.
Saugaat, we had some experience with that as well, and I would report it's gone better than I would have anticipated. Would you?
Yeah.
Would you as well?
Yeah. So the first couple months was all about excitement, right? Everyone was excited to use Teams, and now whiteboard is embedded and using all the bells and whistles. So the first couple months, I think the productivity was very, very high, much higher than even the traditional ways of working. But as you get into certain phases, you do have moments where you realize the importance of in-person collaboration, especially when there's a fix needed, right? When something's not working, and it's easier just to have an in-person discussion rather than log something and wait for someone who might not be at their desk. So that's one area where it was impacted in a negative way. I would say the speed to resolve things when there's a crisis. But for everything else, I think productivity was higher. The flexibility of working remotely actually helped a lot of things where we didn't have to extend the timeline. You're still in the same time frame that was pre-COVID, in person, everyone traveling on site. But yeah, the one lessons learned, I would say, is time to resolve when it's urgent. That definitely took a hit.
That's an interesting distinction to make, because how much of the current ways of working will carry over, do you think, in a post-COVID world?
So one benefit that we didn't talk about, so productivity, we discussed. The other benefit is you save on the time and expense, the fringe cost, right? The cost of traveling. So I think the trend from this that's going to continue is there's going to be more remote work than the earlier traditional ways of, let's say, 70% on-site, 30% remote. Now it's going to tend to be flipping, where it's much less than 50%, maybe 30 to 50%, right, depending on the complexity. And I think the remote work's definitely going to bump up.
Connie, talk a little bit about your experience.
Just
past year, and how, and also what you see looking forward.
Sure. Just to tie off with some of the previous comments, we actually had to put more emphasis on what we call hypercare, or the post-production support. It really forced us to look a little bit more at those processes that happen after go live, quite honestly, and we've made some improvements to those processes. So it did shift a little bit of the emphasis towards a different part of the project than we traditionally spend a lot of resources on. I think going back to COVID and its impact on MKS instruments, our priorities and our roadmap, I think in many ways it was a positive that accelerated things. We had just kicked off and were undergoing a big Microsoft Office 365 transformation project. And, we had it on the roadmap, taking many, many months with a heavy emphasis on organizational change. We have a group in my team that focuses on OCM, or organizational change management. And we found with the pandemic, a lot of those activities were accelerated. And in fact, we rolled out Microsoft Teams across the company in about 2 to 3 months. In addition to kicking off and now in the process of a full voice transformation to Microsoft Voice for the company. So if anything, it took priorities that we felt were going to take 12, 18, 24 months and pulled them into tighter schedules. So we did some shifting of priorities to accommodate that. But we were able now to pull in some other projects and activities that were further down the road in the roadmap. I would also say that consistent with the theme of today's workforce, gone are the four walls of traditional IT where you protect the perimeter and everything happens within the four walls. There is no perimeter anymore from a security perspective. We all do work every day on multiple devices from many locations. So it's really shifted the focus on the security side to a broader perimeter as well. And it has us looking at things that may have been a lower priority for us, like mobile device management and DLP, for example. Those are some things that, have moved to the forefront with the new way we're working.
Yeah. Hey, and Connie, are you also seeing BYOD on the rise?
We're seeing some of that. One of the things we did early on was we had some of our workforce who were still using desktops, and we made a decision very early on to accelerate our refresh program and stop using desktops, and we moved exclusively to laptops. We're not really embracing BYOD quite yet. I think we have some work to do on the security side with mobile device management in particular before we fully embrace that. But that is the direction we're headed in.
It's very interesting you bring that up, Saugaat, because one of the things that we did at the time of the transition, I just want to talk about it way back in March 2020, now more than a year and a month back. We had the need to, we do around $10 billion at HCL. We have around 150,000 employees. All of those 150,000 employees are serving customers like you. For us, the biggest thing was to be able to continue, ensure business continuity for our customers, and to be able to move all of that workforce from on-site, the way they were delivering from large campuses. We have campuses all around the world, to really moving that remote. And I came in, Connie, because I just heard your point of what you said about laptops. The reality is, go back to 2020, suddenly there was a laptop shortage as well. So we had to do all of that because suddenly the people were not able to keep up to the need for the laptops, need for the bandwidth, need for all the devices that were required for remote management. So really from a focus perspective, our focus really was first ensure employee safety, right? And that is obviously key. It's a pandemic. We really didn't know where the waves were going to be happening, who was getting impacted, etc. So, be sure to kind of capture how the employee is doing, how is the customer situation, what does it need to be managed, and manage that with business continuity. Approach the low-hanging fruit, which, like you mentioned, Connie, was exactly right on top of where we needed to be. Saugaat also mentioned that, which is, if there was a voice transformation to be done, if there was more remote capabilities to be added, if there was more video conferencing and other capabilities that needed to be sturdier. All of us had Teams, if not Teams Skype earlier, right? Capabilities were there. It just was not getting used. Business did not see the need to do it. We felt better talking to people, shaking hands in the room, and getting business done differently. That changed overnight. And a lot of low-hanging fruit came from that. And I think that leads the way to where this goes further, which is what are the strategic drivers that sustain over a period of time. And we'll talk, I think, a little more about where the evolving world is going to. That's going to be very different. I think one of the things we can be very certain is not going to be the world that we came from. So whatever it is going to be a different world. I think this panel will kind of express its views on where that is going. But I think that is where the transformation and everything else is heading. So it was a very unique experience. And, for a lot of us, given some of the waves that are happening in India, etc., a large part of our employee base is there around the world as well. This is continuing at this point of time, right? So we are really not in the post-pandemic world yet. In fact, our biggest ask right now is to ensure some of the principles that we started off with continue for a period of time.
Yeah, the situation it certainly isn't the same all around the world. And when we thought we were about to be emerging, India got hit hard and other countries. And so we're not quite sure what the emerging timetable is. Fausto, any of this resonate with you and your experience?
Yes, sure. I think that as you guys were mentioning, this pandemic was a specific moment that tested how well or bad every company have done in the past in terms of preparing to provide additional services to internal users and customers. No, as you mentioned, in a period of a week, we had to increase our capabilities of VPN connections, virtual desktops, enabling things for all the organization. Even though, as Ajay were saying, we were using Skype for business, but eventually we said now it's time to promote things for everyone. No, we had users, specific users with Zoom accounts, but we said no, this is the time to expand and scale this to the whole company. And the good thing around the pandemic, if we can say it, is the willingness to adopt digital capabilities for everyone, customers, users, employees, and the switch on the way that now we see self-service as a high capability in our users. Before they wanted everything to be explained with a lot of training, with a lot of change management. Now they're doing everything. No, I mean they are risking. They are taking risk in terms of learning, and that has helped us a lot. No, we that obviously got us in the middle of many transformations. We're obviously transforming everything to the cloud. We had SAP migrations to the cloud ongoing. Now we're doing that remotely. No, our customers were saying, but we used to have you guys in a single room, 7 by 24 hours on a go live and hypercare process. Now we are in different teams rooms, and it happens to be even better because our users know that they are just a click ahead of reaching us, and they know that there is a specific room for every end-to-end process of the company, and it happened that it reduced the number of tickets that we have in a hypercare moment compared with the on-site schema. Why? Because immediately when they join to the room, they have a question, a doubt, it's been solved immediately, so they don't need to raise a ticket, then someone needs to call them back and see what is going on. And I think there are pros and cons, but I definitely believe that the new ways of working are here forever. Now we're just making sure that we profile the different alternatives. No, we will have full-time people working remotely. We will have, again, full-time people that even they have been there because they are on the operation. They are producing cement or ready mix that cannot be done remotely yet. But we have a lot of people that will be in a hybrid environment. And now we are extending and bringing services of all kinds related to IT and obviously related to information security to protect our employees whenever they want to work, to a remote schema, no, versus with the traditional on-premise facilities that we used to have.
That hybrid work.
Maybe.
Go ahead, Connie.
Maybe jump on some of what Fausto said regarding VPN and so forth. I think what the pandemic has also done is really highlighted the value of the cloud. Those of us who have heard the promise of the cloud for many years have often struggled to justify the business case because the costs aren't always positive and the ROIs aren't always positive moving off premise to the cloud historically. But I think the value has really come out because the user experience in a broad perimeter, as I mentioned, of working remotely is much better on a cloud platform than an on-premise platform. And the investment you need to host people, to host on-premise and provide access to those applications on-premise remotely is another offset that I think historically hasn't been calculated in an ROI for a cloud platform. So I think it's really highlighted the value and it's made the business case more sellable and the value of the cloud more sellable.
Yeah, and one of the broader themes that we're reading about and seeing with some of the early adopters or early adopters of companies is anywhere operations, right? So serve any customer from any location, independent of the channel, or the industry you're in, right? So the anywhere operations is a theme that's gonna I think get a lot of attention, and it's already building up with some of the larger companies, and it can't be done without being digital first or cloud first, and that's a pattern.
Absolutely, and I think anywhere operations is great, and we kind of saw it emerge right from the time when we had to talk about business continuity. And in a COVID kind of situation, you are no longer looking at traditional disaster recovery scenarios,
right,
or a business. So your site is not going down, but a bunch of individuals are falling sick, and if they're sick, they're basically quarantined and out of circulation for 15-day, 20-day period. You really need to be looking at business continuity at a person-by-person basis. So really, as a plan, if we have operations running for 150, 200 people, or let's say a particular client, some shared, some non-shared, you really have to make sure that every person in that team has a person who can take over in case that person is incapacitated, not able to work for a little period of time. And that is where I think the anywhere operations actually coming from, that hey, now if we are having that kind of redundancy, then really does it really need to be city-based, traditional ways of looking, country-based, or it can be anywhere to be executed from? And I think absolutely, Saugaat, we're seeing that as a big trend, that at this point of time, every client is looking for redundancy at a person level, not at a DR, where is my primary site going to be, and all that stuff. I don't even think any customers asking us that question anymore.
Yeah.
Right? Where are you going to be servicing us from, etc. It's really the discussions move to who are my people, where are they going to be, are they going to be ubiquitous, and where the failover is going to happen in case some issue happens with the person. So, yes.
One thing that interests me about as we carry over some of the practices of the pandemic, which is obviously more remote work anywhere sort of situation. But Saugaat, as you pointed out, there are certain situations where you clearly need everybody, or not everybody, but you need a personal presence to deal with, particularly a fix or something like that. But I think the dynamic, or I'm curious about what the dynamic will be like in a hybrid team where some people are working on site and some people are working remotely, and how that will affect psychologically. Will there be kind of a hierarchy that people who are working on site have more, time to kind of rub elbows and convey their ideas? Whether there's a sort of a out on the end of a limb feeling for the people who are working remotely. It's when people are working, a team is composed of people who are both working remotely and on site, and how that might affect the team dynamics actually.
Sure. So, just some thoughts on that. There's a few themes of a few flavors of that I think will come up. One is in certain industries, it works really well, right? Your productivity is high, and in fact, it would be preferred to be remote, more so than hybrid or in person. In manufacturing, it's a little hard, because you need to be on the shop floor. And although there are trends and adoption of wearables, the artificial intelligence powered wearables, HoloLens, and so on, it's still catching up to, let's say, a financial services industry or a technology focused industry. So it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out, but I do see there being a strong preference for the office workers to work remotely more than the folks on the shop floor. And if you take it further, the folks that are remote now want to live in a lower tax, lower cost area because it's all remote. So why do I need to live in, let's say, Chicago? Let me just go to a neighboring state that's the cost of living is lower. So from a HR, from a salary perspective, there's going to be a debate on, what's the right salary range, because it's no longer based on a region that you're based out of, but maybe the type of work you do. So I do see a shift in people when we say remote, is it remote in a specific area? And if not, then what the salary impact would be.
Yeah, that it seems like there is likely to be a major demographic shift,
Right.
at least in North America, as a result of this. Well, has this affected your recruiting? Any of you in building team or replacing team members, where you can look theoretically anywhere for a replacement rather than somebody who needs to be local, where before they needed to be local?
Yeah, I mean, in my case, so I'm undergoing an IT transformation as well, where we're really changing the operating model of IT so we can better scale away from that traditional order-taking IT department to more of a strategic enabling function within the company. And I've done a lot of hiring, about 15% to 20% increase in hiring, and casting that wider net for talent has been extraordinary. We've been able to hire folks in weeks versus months, when we were traditionally sourcing to have them in one of our many offices. So to be able to broaden that net for talent, it's really led to a higher quality of talent and really a more diverse workforce, quite honestly.
Yeah, and similar here, the options open up, right? So the number of candidates has gone higher. It does take a little longer to scan through the resumes, but once you do shortlist, the quality hasn't been impacted, and the aging of open positions has gone down quite a bit.
No, I think IT workers definitely benefited, I have to use that word, from the pandemic, right? I think the availability of both the employers who want to employ, and from an employee perspective to, the options that it opens up is quite a lot more than were traditionally available. So I think, and the fact that you work from home means you're really being as productive as otherwise would be, and really have an equal chance to shine in an all equal environment. So I think the opportunities do open up for people as the geographical constraints or the regional constraints that we have really broken down because of the pandemic at this point of time. I do want to, I know Fausto, you want to go ahead. I'll come back to the points with Saugaat later.
Just complementing, I think I see this getting an impact in variables. On one side, I think this comes to accelerate the speed in which, as a companies and organizations, we need to enable additional digital capabilities for our customers, because now we have customers that are willing to interact as much as possible in a better user experience through digital technologies. And I think that's something that we have seen, and we've been obviously pressured by our top management to go faster. Let's avoid that our customers continue calling to our customer service centers. If we can make everything available in a digital space, so they can feel more productive, they just can call us when there is really a need to call us, and the user experience will increase significantly. On the other side, internally, I remember before the pandemic, we happened to adopt, since maybe 3 years ago, more or less, agility practices. We switched from a waterfall approach to start working in Scrum teams, Agile framework, methodology, so on, or everything that I guess all of you are also experiencing. And I remember that one of the main discussions was related to Scrum teams need to be co-located, and the success of Scrum teams is related to co-location, because we have teams in Europe, America, and sometimes there were conversations around if we place all the teams in one site, it's going to be better. Then they're going to reach more maturity, productivity, speed, and so on. So a lot of discussions about that, co-location. With the pandemic, all the teams had to go to work remotely. So co-location is not any longer under the discussion. So the maturity level we all reach in this cultural change is opening us a lot of new things to evaluate, and has broken a lot of paradigms that we all had in the way that we operate. I think that the IT operation model is now are getting advantage of this new reality where you are able to bring talent from whatever place you want. I think that the freelance business model is just to increase a lot, because now you know that you can hire whatever role and profile that you need in whatever place of the world, and it doesn't matter where they are located, no? And I think this brings a lot of opportunities to companies to accelerate the pace, to deliver services to the customers while getting additional capabilities everywhere.
Yeah, and I think specifically for us, we've taken a look at augmented reality, and that's starting to gain more of a foothold in the company as well. We have many products that require advanced setup on site at a location. We do a lot of field service, and we also do a lot of service outside of our engineering organizations, where the engineers really have to work hands-on with the service techs to roll out new features, new capability, and new changes. So we've looked at augmented reality to help with that, and I can't report that we've returned a ton of value as yet, but we're just getting started, and we see a lot of opportunity there.
Have you had some pilots in that area?
We have, yeah.
What's an example of one that you've experimented with?
Fixing a defect on a product where the engineering group has identified a fix, and then we've used augmented reality for an engineer to demonstrate that hands-on to a service technician, for example. That would be one example.
Okay.
Paul, I'd like to talk about one example we are seeing in the utility market. So as one of the things that utilities face a lot is really, there are vegetation that, we had the California cases of wildfires, etc., that you know of, but there were also some of them because of the utility, the poles, and they're interacting with the wire, with the vegetation, and they're catching on fire. So vegetation management is a very important function that all utilities have to carry on all across North America, all across the world, where they have to look at if the pole's standing up straight, the vegetation's kind of climbing on it, and is there any risk that is getting added to that entire infrastructure because of that. All of that actually was happening through people going to the sites and physically inspecting, field force actually physically inspecting each of these all of the infrastructure a few times a year. Through technology, a lot of that is now shifting to basically image analytics, whether it's satellite imaging, whether it is drone-based imaging, whether taking that basically computer vision in some shape or form, translating that computer vision into image analytics to try and understand how it's really going, 3D, and then translating that into literally a process where you can find out which are the poles or infrastructure that needs help, and automatically through RPA create a work ticket and a work path for a field technician to actually go and approach each of those and see physically and do an exception-based management to actually resolve a lot of those issues. We are seeing those kind of processes, which were really a lot of times almost the future of where utilities was trying to reach out to, accelerate due to the pandemic kind of situations, very higher level of adoption. In manufacturing, we are seeing the same impact on a shop floor. For example, where real-time analytics can be pulled out from various manufacturing value chains and used for making intelligent decision making, even if you are not in the factory floor.
Yeah, more so for supply chain, impact, right? With the global supply chain being impacted, you need data almost real time. Real time is pretty hard, but almost real time to see the impact, right? With a lot of raw materials coming from the Asia Pac region, now suddenly with the borders and the tariffs being high, and logistics industry being impacted because it's hard to find truck drivers, because the demand is so high, which I do see, that kind of a use case where data for supply chain is needed almost real time to make decisions and source locally, and in cases where we had single source, we had to go dual source because a single supplier either couldn't manage the demand, or in some cases, they go out of business as well.
Is there I'm kind of, so we've been talking about the types of ways in which priorities changed that were directly a result of COVID. As you look forward to your broader strategic priorities over the next year or maybe two, have those changed, or are we we hope if we and when we begin to emerge completely that they will kind of reboot to the same sort of major priorities that you had going into the pandemic, or have those? I'm thinking, for example, Connie, of your transformation process that's going on, or Saugaat, yours as well. That's kind of continued, and in some ways has even accelerated during the pandemic. But will there be will you be looking at larger, different sorts of larger strategic priorities as we emerge?
I would say my priorities haven't changed significantly. I would say, if anything, we might accelerate and shuffle some of the priorities around in areas that I spoke to, more emphasis perhaps on the cloud, as well as the security elements that I spoke to. But by and large, not a lot of changes. I think for me in my industry, with the growth of my company, those priorities are still number one, will always be number one, and scaling us to a $5 billion company, quite honestly, are what I'm going to be focused on. Sure.
Fausto, I was thinking about your mentioning your relationships with customers changing as a result of the pandemic. Do you think that is that a permanent change in the relationship, in changes in the way you relate to your own customers and interact with them?
Yes, totally. I think that the thing that I see is an increasing in terms of responsibilities and challenges, together with a need to go faster. No, speed is the new element that is combining a lot in what we're doing. No, and I think it's challenging because the strategy we had remains there, but have been increased with some others. No, as we already mentioned, and we need to replicate what we had on premise to now remote to all our employees and users. But besides that, I think we've been pushed to go faster in terms of how are we enabling these digital capabilities to our customers, because now we have customers that are more willing to endeavor in these new ways of working. And they are demanding new capabilities that we had in the backlog, a plan maybe for 1 or 2 years, but now happens to be more relevant than ever. And
what's an example of that sort of customer demand that you're?
For example, we have the electronic proof of delivery. That maybe before no one cares about continue getting papers when your order was delivered at the job site. Now no one wants to get papers, and they don't want to sign in your tablet, because of obvious reasons of COVID. So now they want in their current CEMEX track application that they have, they want to sign the electronic proof of delivery in their own device. And that was something we needed to accelerate immediately as part of the pandemic. And an example of that, we have plenty that obviously customers are demanding these new technologies to be available for them, in every interaction we have for our business.
Yeah, I agree with that, Fausto. Like in general terms, if there were certain features or requirements that were nice to have, now they're certainly must have and cannot or not acceptable to not have, right? Like, so a theme of all the technology decisions are now cloud first, security first, and mobile first, right? And if that those top three don't match, the investment's not going to get approval. So there is acceleration, not just in terms of expectations of the deliverables, but I think the resistance, or not resistance, but I think spending money on products that help us be cloud first and mobile enabled and so on. I think the leadership's more open to it. Whereas in the past it was like, is it necessary? Well, okay, just sign it here, right? Why do you need it automated? So yeah, that's definitely a trend which will continue.
I think the business, it's easier to see the value in many of these initiatives, whereas in the past it was, I'll call it the necessary evil of IT to implement some of these security measures or even the cloud. But now the value is more apparent to the business and the business leadership.
It's interesting.
One of the theme that I started to see was, in the past it would be the technology folks, the IT folks that would introduce or mention about a new tool. Now the business, based on their research or what they talk to their peers, they bring those in. Hey, why can't we use Miro for process flow mapping as an example, right? So that's a trend where a lot of non-technical folks are becoming more aware of the different products out there.
And the technologies are enabling it, right? So you have platforms of low code, no code, giving a lot of flexibility to business to try to do things themselves. So yes, there is complex programming that still exists, but I think since the options are there, a lot of business really wants to have that flexibility to try and be having a more composable architecture at the back end. So that actually lends the way to really having the bimodal IT that we've always talked about, to try and create a system of record for the larger things. So if you've got SAP and you've got other things, CRMs, etc., you do a lot of activities there, but still give business the flexibility to be able to be more composable, have MVPs set up so that they can actually go after what they really want to do in the shorter period of time, see the returns come through faster, and see that flexibility that an IT organization can actually deliver for them, rather than be an impediment in what they're trying to do.
Yeah, and it also requires a change in the way we behave as an organization. So I mentioned the transformation we're doing to move away from that order taker. With all of this technology and all of this demand from the business, we run the risk of shadow IT, right? Or rogue IT, right? We all have experienced that. So it really requires us to become more strategic, to partner more closely, to understand our business customer and our users, to have more of a seat at the table with the leadership and align with the strategy of the company, right? If we're able to do that, we then can understand our customers' needs and help them go to market for technology and solutions. If we don't change that behavior, the business is going to move on. They have to, right? I had my CEO ask me, he said to me, I know if I'm losing market share to a competitor and I'm not winning, what is happening and where I have to focus, right? What area of the business to get that market share back. How do you know that in IT? And my answer was shadow IT. If people aren't coming to my organization and asking me for help, and I'm not able to help them and enable them, I'm losing that market share, and they're going outside and figuring out on their own. And as we know as IT professionals, that can become a very chaotic environment that's very difficult to manage. So it really has forced a change in my organization, where we're putting people in roles where they can focus more on the business.
It's an interesting idea to think of IT's market share, whether they're or even mind share, maybe in this case with your internal customers. Let's just we're nearing the end here, but I want you to take a look in your crystal ball and think maybe not a major change, but the most vivid change you might predict, either in your own professional world and context or in your industry, something that isn't guaranteed to happen, but that you think in the next 12 to 18 months would be a noticeable and vivid change from. We've talked about how things have changed in the last 18 months. What do you think is the biggest change that will occur in the next 18 months? And you can be a little risky. No one's going to hold you to it.
So I'll be risky and say, I don't know if it's going to change, other than what we've already stated. I don't know if it's going to change as much as we think it is. Mm-hmm. I think there will be a sense of stabilization that occurs, and the new normal, will have elements of the way we approach our work that were prevalent during the height of the pandemic. But I really think there will be some degree of return to normalcy that might surprise some people. Mm-hmm. That would be my prediction.
That people, there may be an exhaustion level in terms of change, possibly, or a desire at least for. Do you think that's a revert? It would be a revert to previous practices or ways of working.
It'll be somewhere in the middle. I just think it might not be as drastic a shift as the quote unquote experts are predicting.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so too, and see, everything works in cycles, right? So at one point there was everybody on premise, then there was a shift a little bit. Pandemic forced it more heavy on the remote side. That's gonna get that momentum for the next 12-18 months, and then I think in 2 years there's gonna be a push to now start coming back in the office, more in person, less Zoom fatigue, mental health, all that's gonna start popping up. So we'll reach a saturation pretty quickly within 2 years, and then we're gonna go back in that cycle, and that's how I think it'll be.
What do you think your workday is? How might your workday be different in the next 18 months, Saugaat?
I'm starting earlier than I used to because it's easy, right? For the days we're working from home. And it's a little more flexible. So if I gotta take a break during the day and catch up late in the night, that's added to the productivity. I think travel there'll be a push as soon as the market, the travel reopens. There'll be a push to start traveling and meet people. But within 3 months or so, it's gonna settle down to a medium, rather than just go, travel every week. To all right, now we were overdue for the in-person interactions. We were productive before. Now that balance will start to come in about 6-9 months or so. But I think there'll be a strong push to start traveling very quickly, which will mellow down in 6 months or so.
That's been something that people have mentioned in these panels, is that one of the greatest enhancers of productivity in the last 18 months is people aren't on airplanes so much of the time, right. Going through security. And, right. And that's an incredible amount of time, even though you can get work done on a plane, to have that time really focused in your, without being on the go. Fausto, what do you see in your 12 to 18 months from now?
I think a hybrid model is going to be the end game. That's my perception. I think as you guys mentioned, in the very short time where everyone will be able to come back to the offices, maybe we're going to get rid of the video conference services for a while. But eventually, I think that this hybrid model has proven to be the best thing to balance work and life in a better way. And I think it's been really appreciated by all employees. On the other hand, I will say that we need to recognize that as part of this digital revolution in which we are, I see a lot of changes in the way that the jobs and the industries will change through the automation and the usage of artificial intelligence and so on. the exploitation of data democratization, liquidity, monetizations, and many of those things I think are coming to really transform every industry. The new business models based on platform rather than in product, I think are coming and are going to be accelerated as part of this, because everyone is moving faster and faster, and those who were hesitating to move through the digitalization, now they realize that they were very wrong, no, and they are investing a lot of money. And if you see the level of investments in IT recently, it's increasing significantly. And why? Because everybody knows that this race just was getting an additional boost, and those who will get faster are the ones that are going to have advantages versus the others in every industry, no? So that's the way I see it, and I think for all of us, I guess this hybrid model will be also beneficial for balancing our work and life altogether.
You know, people say that whatever the manifestation, digital transformation is accelerated in most cases during the pandemic, just out of necessity. And whether that, maybe what you've suggested is that increased speed may continue on and not pull back as we emerge. Ajay, any thoughts for what things will be like 12 to 18 months from now?
Inflation.
Sorry?
I said inflation. Well, that was on a lighter note. But from an IT perspective, I think I'm more aligned with honestly where Fausto thinks the world is heading to. I do believe some of the processes with digital workers, etc., coming into picture where hyper automation is really a reality. I think a lot of these processes, right? So we've had technologies. We have technologies like AI, ML. They're evolving, but they've been there. We have had computer vision. We have had image analytics for some time. We have had RPA. I think a lot of these technologies have a lot of potential. Very similar to Teams and platform. We didn't realize that potential in Zoom. We didn't realize that potential till we got into a situation when it was inevitable, that we saw that we had to use it, and suddenly it became ubiquitous, so much so that we don't know whether we get back to normal or what hybrid and so on and so forth. I think these technologies exist, and they will impact our businesses, especially the traditional asset-heavy industries, which are not customer-facing as much. They're not B2C as much. Some of them are becoming B2C, so Volkswagen, for example, is expecting that 30% of its sales will actually happen in online mode, where people customize what car they want and actually go and pick it up. And others are also talking about different kind of customizations. So one, the industry is changing. Secondly, the ability of these technologies to come together, people have now started seeing what they are and what they can do. And I think the business cases by which will be made going forward will be a lot. And companies are taking care to involve business in IT, and business is trying to involve IT to come closer, and therefore business involvement is likely to go up as well. So I do believe there is a new normal we are heading towards, where we are really what is traditionally been OT or business and then IT is really going to merge because of some of these technologies coming together, and their ability to influence the other side of the house extremely to an advantage, and so much so that can be a business advantage. So whether it's cost, which was the traditional RPA play, whether it is business agility, which is where really we are talking about right now, or risk management, I do see the technologies playing a much bigger role in how we have been doing things and how we will do things in the future.
Well, gentlemen, thank you for your thoughts. It's the whole origin of Straight Talk was to get insights straight from the, if not the horse's mouth, the CIO's mouth or the practitioner's mouth, people who see it on a day-to-day basis. And you've provided some of those insights here today that I think are interesting, both for all of us, the five of us sitting here, but for a broader audience who faces similar challenges and issues. And I want to thank you for taking the time to share your insights. And I'm going to take that back. I'm going to say we're going to actually record these predictions, and we're coming back in 18 months, and we're going to hold you to them, and see exactly whether we've.
You might change your comment to the other end of the horse if they don't.
That could well be too. Thank you very much, anyway, for taking your time from various parts of North America, and be fun to get together again sometime in the future. It's been a pleasure today, and thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Bahl. Thank you, everyone.